What's going on, everyone? Scott here. Welcome back to the channel. So Michigan State football is well into fall camp, and we are inching closer to game day in East Lansing, a little more than 2 weeks out at time of recording. Now, last week we had a video talking about the 4 most intriguing position battles in fall camp. Had 2 on offense, 2 on defense, and really this was early position battles in fall camp and really going into the season as well. Today, we're going to clean up the rest of the roster, talk about the other 5, really, I guess you could say 7 position groups, because we're going to talk about special teams a little bit. That maybe is a little more cut and dry, some of these position groups, spoiler alert, like quarterback, and go through those and get a good bird's eye view of the roster, going into these last 2 weeks of fall camp, or really this last, week and a half of fall camp, and then you get into game week, going up against Florida Atlantic here the last week of August here. Now, before we jump in, if you could hit that like and subscribe button down there for more Michigan State content leading up to the first game and throughout the season as well. So diving in first, let's just dive into the most obvious on the offensive side of the ball, and that's quarterback. No surprise here, it's Aiden Childs. Now, obviously, probably was the most highly sought after player that joined the roster this offseason. He was the second highest rated transfer quarterback that was in the transfer portal this offseason, coming over with Jonathan Smith from Oregon State. Close behind, probably Jack Velling and Tanner Miller, who both joined him with Jonathan Smith from Oregon State as well this offseason. But Childs, as a true freshman, played in 9 games last year. Jonathan Smith wanted to get him reps as a true freshman, knowing that he'd be the quarterback of the future. Obviously, at the time, figured it'd be for Oregon State, but now, obviously, here at Michigan State, glad that he did that. Get him some on-the-field action, knowing that DJU was ahead of him in the depth chart, but still was able to see some game action. 24 for 35 on pass attempts last year with 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. He will be the clear-cut starter. May take some time to get to that all Big Ten level that I personally believe, and a lot of people personally believe, that he can get to. But nonetheless, we don't need him to be an all Big Ten caliber player this year. I hate to break it to anyone. I hate to say it as a Michigan State fan, but we're not going to be competing to go to Indy this year. We're not going to be competing for a top 12 spot to get in that college football playoff. Show flashes this year in terms of Aiden Childs and really the team as a whole. Show flashes, growing in the offense, bringing other guys along with him. And then next year and, really his junior year, and then hopefully if he doesn't go to the draft and he sticks around his senior year, that's when you make that jump to that, all Big Ten level. And it's like, all right, let's start, looking at some goals here of what we're, looking to possibly accomplish in this conference and, nationally as well, with team success as well, too. A big addition to the room I do want to mention, which hopefully we don't have to see him, and that's nothing against him, but that just obviously means something probably went wrong with Aiden Childs, and that's Tommy Schuster. 6th-year guy who's from the state, was previously at North Dakota, had a really good career there, but having that experienced guy in the room will help everyone in the room in general. Childs included. Obviously, Childs is only going into his 2nd year of college football, first full year as the starter, and then obviously the other young guys, the young quarterbacks that are in the room as well. He'll be a great veteran presence in there for everyone. Teach everyone, how you handle business in college, game plan, all that stuff. Next up, we're going to talk about the running backs. Now, if you missed the last, fall camp position battle preview video, on the offensive side, we talked about the offensive line and the wide receiver room. So just covered quarterback. So as I said, running into the running backs, I think Nate Carter is still the clear-cut guy here. Had some nice moments at the beginning of the year last year, but really struggled the last, 2/3 of that year. And frankly, don't put much of the blame on him personally, and I think a lot of people don't. Struggling offensive line, one of the worst offenses in college football. Oh, and to mention, your head coach getting fired during all of this at the beginning of the season, kind of sending everything into a tailspin for the whole roster. So I don't put a lot of blame on Nate. I think Nate will have a bounce back year this year with hopefully an improved offensive line, as we talked about in that first video, and a more dynamic offense. Should have some improved play from him this year. And then also, next up on the depth chart is a guy who I think will also help out Nate Carter, giving him someone who can come in and run the ball effectively, just like Nate can. And that's 6th-year running back transfer from UMass, K'Ron Lynch-Adams. rushed for 1,157 rushing yards last year and 12 touchdowns. Gives you more experience depth at the position. Closing out behind him, true freshman Brandon Tullis. We saw him quite a bit this past year in the spring game, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a little bit of run this year as a true freshman. Probably, though, preserving that red shirt going forward. Another name to watch out there in a reserve role, Joseph Martinez. He's a smaller running back, maybe a more of a speed guy if you need him out there, but I believe that, the bell cows for this team at the running back position, Nate Carter, K'Ron Lynch Adams. So closing out the offensive side of the ball, we got the tight end room. Headliner is obviously Jack Velling, one of the most highly sought after transfer portal tight ends. He was tied for the most tight end touchdown catches last regular season with 8, coming over with his offense, with his head coach, Jonathan Smith, his position coach, Brian Wozniak, his offensive coordinator, Brian Lindgren. So hopefully we can have similar results from Jack this upcoming season. Right behind him, we assume Brendan Parachek, sophomore. However, he has apparently been out for a couple days here in fall camp with an injury. Something to keep an eye on, but sounds like he could be ready for the opener here in the coming weeks. It doesn't sound like it's too serious. So we're hoping for that. Haven't seen a lot of him or our next guy that we have on the depth chart, Michael Masunis. Haven't seen either of these guys a lot. Parachek or Masunis, who's a redshirt sophomore. We expect both of them in the rotation. As well as 7th-year guy Tyneil Hopper, who unfortunately got injured last year, Week 3 in the Washington game, and missed the remainder of the season after that Week 3 game. So all right, now let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball and finish out the roster here. First, starting with the linebacker room, arguably MSU's deepest position room on the roster. You have veteran guys like Darius Snow, like Cal Halliday, who've been on the roster for a while. Then you have younger guys like Jordan Hall, who was a standout freshman last year. You have Aaron Alexander, and then you have true freshman Brady Pretzlaff. Then you have some transfers that are coming in. Jordan Turner, redshirt senior from Wisconsin. You have Wayne Matthews Jr. from Old Dominion and Samaj Bridgman from that school down the road. If I had to say right now, I think it also depends on what defensive coordinator Joe Rossi is going to run. Is he going to run a 3-4 or a 4-3? It seems like him, as well as Coach Smith, will adjust his schemes, and I know Coach Smith has said this a handful of times, adjust his scheme to fit his players. That's a weird concept. If someone should have told the last staff that, but anyway, we're moving on. I think Jordan Hall is going to be out on the field one way or the other. He'll probably obviously slide in at that middle linebacker position still. Then it seems like for a long while now that transfer Wayne Matthews will be that pass coverage linebacker. Then I think on the other side, I think Jordan Turner will be out there. Given his knack for rushing the passer, last year he had a career high 6.5 tackles for loss and also had a career high 3 sacks last year at Wisconsin. If Rossi does shift to a 3-4, then I think tackling machine Cal Halliday will be out there. And I mean, it's crazy to think that he might not be out there as a starter, given his success always being near the top of the conference in tackling and tied for first in program history with 3 defensive touchdowns, actually. And I think that just speaks to the depth of the room. And I think also, too, I think Darius Snow will see a lot of time as well, rotating in. And Darius is probably my favorite player on the roster. I think he brings that kind of hybrid role. We saw it in 2021, how successful he was that year. And just unfortunately has struggled with some injuries the last 2 years. So we're hoping for a fully healthy year from redshirt junior Darius Snow. Now we're closing it out with the safeties. Really, I think you got Malik Spencer starting at one of the safety spots. I think that's pretty much a given. He is also getting a lot of NFL buzz, like early round, like first, second round NFL draft buzz in the coming couple years. Next, I briefly mentioned this in the last video, but Dylan Tatum. I think he'll be that other guy starting at safety. As I've talked up and down about Dylan Tatum, I think he's kind of that Swiss Army knife. You can have him at safety. If you need to, I think you can move him in the slot. We've seen him some at cornerback last year. I think he's a guy you can move around this defense wherever you need to. But I got those two as my starting safeties. I think Angelo Gross could slide back and play some safety as well if needed. Right now, I think he'll probably, as I mentioned last video, we talked about the defensive back room. I think Angelo Gross will play that slot corner position to start the year. Another guy who I think will see the field at the safety position could also, I think I mentioned in the last video as well, could see him slot into that slot cornerback role as well. But Nakai Martinez, transfer from UCF. He started all 13 games at safety last year for UCF down there, so he's another name to watch back there. But then also another name on MSU's roster, I think, to watch at the safety position is Armorion Smith, is someone who will get a lot of run at safety. I think he played 75 snaps last year at safety before getting injured and missing the remainder of the season. And also, while we are here talking about Armorion Smith, I do want to say that we are thinking of Amarion and his family after his mother just passed away last week. There's a GoFundMe page out there. I'll put it down in the description. Explains everything after she had a battle with breast cancer. If you can at least go read about her in the GoFundMe page and about Amarion's situation. If you can help out him and his family during this incredibly difficult time and donate, that would be great as well. Closing out on the football side, no position battles or anything here. Just wanted to mention them. Jonathan Kim will be back starting at kicker for the Spartans after an honorable mention All Big Ten year in his first year here in East Lansing. And then also Ryan Eckley is back after a first team freshman All-American season last year and a second team All Big Ten campaign last year. So that will do it for the roster and some position battles going into, or in the middle of this fall camp, going into the first part of the season. We'll be back to talk about the season more as a whole as we get closer to kickoff. And we'll be back for those of you who love going to Spartan Stadium and East Lansing on game day. We're going to have some fun themed videos as we get closer to kickoff, before we get closer to hitting those parking fields, those parking lots in East Lansing on Friday, August 30th against those Florida Atlantic Owls. Going to have some fun themed videos going forward these next 2 weeks as we inch closer to kickoff of this 2024 football season. But that'll do it for this one. Again, if you can, go check out that GoFundMe in the description about Armorion Smith and his family. Down there in the description. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.